Today I'm going to talk about some of the photos by master photographer Sebastiao Salgado and some of the tips that I learned by looking at his Genesis photos. Now, a few words about Sebastiao Salgado. He's a Brazilian photographer. He mostly does social documentary photography and photojournalism, but he also does landscape photography. Now, I chose mostly landscape and travel photos, and I will speak about it. But before I go into the more detail and I will show you the photos, I think it's worth talking about two of the quotes that I think define his work. Now, the first quote says that I'm not an artist. An artist makes an object. Me, it's not an object. I work in history. I'm a storyteller. And then the second quote by Sebastiao Salgado is that I don't want anyone to appreciate the light or the palette of tones. I want my pictures to inform, to provoke discussion, and to raise money. So this is a very frank and very direct way of speaking about his work. And as you can see, his work raises discussion and provokes discussion. This is what we are doing today in this video. I think his work is really powerful. He's doing all his work in black and white, and the way he tries to tell the story, it's a very powerful one. And because of his photos are black and white, I think the message has to be really powerful and really a really clear one to get to the audience. Now let's take a look at some of the photos that I've selected. I chose 9 photos from his Genesis series, and I will tell you my opinion on these photos and also some ideas, some tips, some suggestions, that some of the things that we all can learn from the work of this photographer. Now, I will start with this photo that it's a statement of simplicity. I often said that landscape photos look much better with fewer elements, and the most important thing when you're doing landscape photography, it's knowing what elements really contribute or add to the story, and realize what are the elements that are not important and don't add anything, and those are the elements that you should get rid of. And the simple you get, the better the photo and the clearer the message will be. In this image is the tail of a whale sticking out of the water, and the way I think it's captured, as you can see, the horizon line is perfectly in the middle, but it doesn't hurt the composition. It doesn't hurt that you have an element of interest almost in the center of the photo. The upper part of the photo, it's really important because you have those clouds, and if you would have had a clear sky, I think this photo would not work. The fact that you have an almost abstract pattern, although there are no abstract patterns in nature, but the thing that you have up there in the clouds compensates for the pattern of the water, and in all this space lies the black, almost black tail of a whale, and the water around it, it's a little bit brighter, which helps, of course, create contrast. As you can, if you take a look, for example, the way this photo is presented or interpreted or processed or whatever you want to call it, you will see that in the lower part of the photo, the image is slightly darker, then is a little bit brighter. In all that brightness comes the subject, the tail of the whale, and then comes again darkness and then light. And this alternation between light and darkness and this play of tones create the story of this photo. Now let's take a look at the following image, which are some sand dunes. You will often see in the work of Sebastiao Salgado that he's using really strong lines to create his compositions, strong diagonals or strong zigzags if you want. It's an extreme form of S shape. This is the simplest way I can say it. You can see, for example, the eye starts in the lower left corner, and then you go up to the right, and then again you turn back to the left, and this this slope over here, it's counterweighted by this area over here and then this area over here, and it's almost like the shape, it's almost like organic, if you want. It reminds you of skin, of human form, and again the simplicity of the scene works really well. I think what looks really good is the texture in the sand, and in order to get texture in the sand, and also this is valid also for snow, is to position yourself relatively to the sun in such a way that you get shadows, and those shadows will reveal your texture. If you have the shadow behind you, for example, you will see no texture in sand or snow, and this will not help your image. Now the following image is about geometry, and again you see a really strong line, and it's this line over here. This is a line that descends and that helps keeping the eye over here in this region where there are the penguins. Framing this photo in such like this, it's just a little bit unusual, because in landscape photography this is not a wild shot. This is not a wildlife shot. This is not a photo that wants to capture the wildlife of penguins, but it's a photo that it's about penguins, but it's about the way they're living, how they're living on this small glacier. And usually in landscape photography the subject is sustained by composition, and it's not getting a really large portion of the image. The subject has a certain dimension, but it's supported by composition. And in this situation, this entire iceberg creates the little world of these penguins. The fact that it's an intimate shot of this iceberg creates the sensation that this is the world, this is where those penguins are forced to live, and look at how many of them are there. And I'm pretty sure that penguins are on many icebergs, but this one over here had the perfect shape, the shape that leads the eye to the subject. Of course it helps a lot that the penguins have those black backs, and they separate really great from the ice. Now another photo, it's an aerial photo, and it's water canals seen from above, and places and really twisted and organic shapes of land. But what I think gives power to this image is the clouds in the distance. The clouds in the horizon offer you the true perspective and the true dimension of the landscape. So keep in mind that giving perspective to and proportion to your landscape is extremely important. It helps define the landscape better. Also, these clouds show you how immense the place really is, how large, how vast, and this way the depth dimension, it's really well transmitted. Another photo, again sand dunes. Over here you don't get too many details in the sand, probably because it wasn't a windy day and the sand was really calm, but the human element, it's what makes the difference over here. This is the only reason for which this entire area is in the shot, because if this human were not present in this area of the photo, then you would not have a logical reason for which to have this area in the photo. The most interesting area, it's over here with this clear cut and these alternation of dark and light. This would have been a much more interesting photo, but because you have the human element over here, then you can frame it like this. And of course it helps that the human is perfectly separated from this landscape. in many occasions, if you make this photo in color, you need to be careful how do you separate the human from the landscape in a situation like this. But being a black and white image, I think it's much easier to do that. Another of his images, again you see this powerful composition of zigzag. This is the zigzag, and these are just elements that hold your eye to this to the way this stream of water is flowing. It's really important to realize that there are elements that are part of the composition, and there are secondary elements that just help you concentrate the eye where you want to. You will often see in the photos of Sebastiao Salgado that he has drama in the sky. You almost in any photo see dark clouds and heavy clouds that add to the atmosphere. And this is not just an artistic element. This is also a technical element, because if you have a clear sky, then the eye can escape in that area. But if you have clouds, that creates a chaos, if you want, a pattern of chaos that the eye uses it as a stop barrier and forces you to look down on the earth. And I think this is a really important lesson to understand and to use in your landscape photo. If you have clouds, use it in a certain way. If you don't have clouds, probably it's better not to include the sky at all in your photo. Now this photo over here takes me to the idea of using a closer shot or a wide angle shot. It's not that wide. It's not that a wide angle. It's more the photographer being close to these animals. But you often need to have a strong reason for which you get close to an element. In many occasions, landscape photographers use the idea of having a foreground element in the wrong way. I mean, it's not an interesting foreground, but we have the foreground because this is the way we are taught, and it's not always the case. You always have to have a strong reason for which you decide to have an element really close. In this case, of course, this is a powerful image because the animal is turning to the photographer, and then you have this entire landscape filled with penguins, and it's a really powerful image. It speaks to you. Again, you see the heavy dark clouds that forces you to have your attention in the lower part of the photo. Now this is a photo speaking about the right moment. I mean, this photo looks perfect. It's just like a stage, and those penguins look like they're trained to do something like this, to be there in a perfect diagonal line, and to one of them was jumping in the water. And this image is perfect from a composition standpoint. This is perfect. You don't get much perfect than this. And again, you see these strong diagonals, and you see this entire white and this line of penguins that are really coming, are really visible because of the contrast. And then you have a little bit of darkness, and then you have some pattern that, again, it's some kind of an abstract pattern. It has a little bit higher, it has a contrast a little bit higher, and that is why this part of the image it's just a counter, acts like a counterweight to this entire area, and this is the only reason for it. But also doesn't draw the eye because it's a little bit darker and it's a chaotic pattern over here. But here, where you have order, where you have a clear and defined line, here is where your eye sticks. Of course, you get the action, and action will always make a photo much more interesting. And we reached the last of these 9 photos where I want to emphasize the idea of seeing textures or patterns. Often I heard lots of landscape photographers saying there's nothing to photograph here, look, it looks dull because there is this area where there is snow and also there is not snow, and we have all these let's say patches of dirt that don't look okay. Well, take a look at this photo. It looks great. Again, the zigzag. This is the stream of water, and these patches of black dirt alternated with white snow look exactly like streams of water that go down and fill this mainstream of water that goes through the entire valley. And I think this is also a really powerful image because of the high contrast and the way that forces you to limit your attention only to one element, this stream of water going through these mountains. Now I really hope that you found this short video useful about the tips that I learned from looking at some of the photos of Sebastiao Salgado Genesis book. And if you found this video interesting, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, thanks for supporting me, for sharing my work, and until next time, keep on photographing. It's the only way that you can get better. Bye bye.